Good evening, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. You all know that I like to get right into business, right? We like to jump right into it. So here we go. This evening, we are discussing math identity is infrastructure. And yes, it's really like that, right? It really is like that. A lot of times, we only think about math identity as a mindset issue, but y'all, we're way past that. We're way past fixed mindset and versus growth mindset. This is an issue with just the basic organization and the physical and emotional, right? Because in this case, people are at the center of the work in education. So this is an issue with, again, organizational layers, but the physical and emotional things when it comes to learning math. It's an infrastructure issue. So that's why we're choosing that word and we're choosing to explain it that way today. So, y'all, things we're going to talk about. I've been trying to give y'all a heads up at the beginning so you know what to expect. One, that confidence is not a random thing, it's not random at all. Next, we're going to be clear that struggle is not personal failure. It is actually, we keep saying this, is a part of the learning process. You will have some struggle and some frustration, but we're talking about, as the adults, how to respond when we're in the midst of that learning moment, because it's a learning moment. The third layer, systems. So, systems, home life, and school life, they both shape identity. A lot of times we kind of like to point the finger and be like, well, at school, they need to teach the kids about blank more. And then school is like, well, at home, they need to make sure. But the reality is, both sides are huge pieces of the puzzle, and they are both shaping math identity, right? Shaping identity, period, especially we're talking about in terms of math class. So, identity drives the long term outcomes. Y'all know how we've been talking a lot about now how there's certain decisions, certain choices our young people are making as to whether or not they see themselves as math people, quote unquote. But then long term, that impacts the trajectory, right? Certain job choices they may take, career paths, all of those decisions that are being made. So we're talking about these basic things this evening. Basic but layered. So we've been told for years that math confidence is about mindset, right? Like if you think it, you can be it. And that's true to an extent, but what if that's not the whole story, right? So math identity isn't just about how students feel, it's about what they experience repeatedly. And I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to say that one more time. It's not just about like what they feel, right? Whether they feel confident, whether they feel some anxiety, but it's about what they experience repeatedly. So it's just on repeat, right? It's a cycle, a loop that's running through. So let's actually talk about that. Let's take a look. Let's inspect it, shall we? What are students experiencing over and over and over again? So, those repeated experiences, because they keep happening, because they're on loop, that's what starts to shape how students feel about math. So, it's the experiences first that guide the feelings, and they guide those feelings about math, during math, and then after math. So, we're going to talk about all of those layers. So these feelings about math before they even start, y'all, before a pencil touches a piece of paper, there's already some big feelings, some big thoughts and emotions, right? Good evening, good evening. So what students are actually experiencing, we said, time after time on repeat, this math identity is forming. At home, they may hear, all right, we're about to do some math. Tension may rise. Parents saying, oh, let's get this over with. Come on, we're about to. You need to focus today. So things that are framing math as something just to get through, right? We haven't even picked up a pencil yet. But just think about how common some of those phrases and sayings are. We're talking about at home first, right? And this is before, because we're talking about the feelings about math, during math, and after math. So this is just about, right? We haven't even done anything yet. In class, maybe they're seeing others finish pretty quickly. They may hear the adult in the room say, well, this is review. You should already know this. So, what that creates already, we haven't even begun So before they begin, some students start feeling things and thinking things like, well, I'm behind because I don't remember this. I'm not good at math anyway. I don't get this. I don't know what's going on, right? So that's not content. Y'all, that's conditioning. That's conditioning, right? And we know conditioning is when there's a certain goal, even if we're not careful, it's a certain not even a goal. Let me change that. It's a certain learned outcome, because it's a learned outcome when a certain pattern is repeated, right? That's conditioning. So they learn this outcome because this certain pattern is repeated. Let's see, someone said, not just feelings, but repeated experiences that help shape math identity. Yes. So the repeated experiences, that's the front end, right? That is the actual conditioning that gets to the learned objective, but the learned objective is the identity, their math identity that's forming. Exactly that. Exactly that. All right. So that was the feelings about. We didn't even do anything yet. Now let's talk about the feelings during math while they're actually working, right? So during the learning at home, the parent, the adult may have explained multiple times. They're giving it all they have, right? They're giving it all they got. So the student might still be confused. So then the tone shifts. We just did this. You're overthinking it. Then work becomes emotional. In class, right? Some of the feelings again during math, but in math class, the teacher is modeling, but the teacher is modeling quickly because remember, it's a review. We're just going over this. You should know this already. So the teacher is pacing pretty quickly. There's limited time really to process, to think about, make connections. And y'all know we talked last week and we had a nice, good chat and conversation about how reflection is one of the biggest pieces in the shift, right? To shift up, to deepen, not just deepen understanding, but to lock in new learning. We have to have that reflective piece. So if there's not really time for processing because the pacing is moving quickly, we're striking down things on a couple ends with that one. Okay. Maybe also in class, the emphasis is on getting the right answer so we can move on. Remember, this is just review. Y'all got it? Y'all remember? Okay. So student confusion will often go unspoken. It'll often go unspoken because those are those moments when sometimes we see compliance, right? They were taking notes. They wrote what I wrote. Everybody's sitting there. They were locked in, and it may have been a false engagement, right? They were just doing what you did. They were being compliant. That doesn't mean that they were truly learning and understanding and can apply it somewhere. They were just being compliant. So if someone is confused, it's not going to show in that type of an environment and situation because we're moving along, we're rolling, right? So what happens also in that environment during math, whether they were experiencing certain things at home, we described the home things, we just finished talking about the class side. Students will start to feel anxious. They'll feel rushed, right? Students will throw down the pencil like, ma'am, you're way too quick. I'm still on step 1 copying and you're talking about step 5 right now, right? They feel anxious, rushed. They might feel exposed and very unsure. Those are very common feelings for the during math. So when again, the thinking isn't visible, right? Confidence has nothing to hold on to. If all the steps are just kind of in the air, right? We didn't go back to the concrete. We didn't go back to the representational phase. It's just kind of in the air. Then yes, the learning and thinking is not visible. So confidence is just up in the air and rather invisible as well, if we're going to talk about it. So we're making sure again that we're anchoring the thinking in some visibility, something to touch, something to see. So confidence can attach to it. All right. Now we talked about the feelings about math. Before we even do anything, we talked about feelings during math. And that third layer we said we were going to get into was feelings after math. So we just did some things, right? We just did some learning. So now what? This is where the identity really starts to solidify. If there was some uncertainty before, maybe like some thoughts starting to form. Now we're locked in. We're locked in. I've made some hard decisions. I'm drawing my line in the sand. So at home, we finished the homework, but I'm unsure. So feedback may sound like, well, you need more practice. We'll try again tomorrow. In class, papers return to you with some grades, and there's the joke. Y'all know what I'm talking about? The joke that you already know when the teacher used to give your paper back to you like this, that it didn't go well. Y'all know what I'm talking about? When the teacher's passing papers back, but they fold yours in half and give it to you like this, that assignment didn't go well for you. Y'all know what I'm talking about? But on another note, the young people do not have that experience as often. And part of me loves that for them because a lot of their things are graded on a computer. So it's really their business. So they're missing out on that rite of passage that some of us feel we had, right? Y'all know them, y'all remember. I know. As soon as that paper was folded up, you were like, oh, you already knew. You already knew. So in class, after work has been done, after the math has happened, papers are returned with grades. The focus is on the score and correctness, not as much on reflection and thinking. Y'all, and if I have to keep saying it, reflection is part of the learning. Reflection has to happen as part of the learning process and the cycle. If we're skipping that, so I'm going to say this really quickly. Remember, we talked about how there's like 3 layers of math learning, how we learn math, right? We have our concrete, our representational, and our abstract. I'm going to say this again, but reflection is at each level. So I don't want to confuse the fact that, oh, after we did some learning, after we did a formative assessment, a quiz, an exit ticket, something, now we're reflecting. No, your reflection is actually built in to each level by design, because again, that's how you retain the learning. That's how you solidify the foundation. And that's how we can continue to build them up from there. Definitely. So what happens with all that whirling after the math? So students walk away thinking, well, I got it wrong. So that means I don't understand this, or I'm not good at this. And that may not be true, right? They may not understand like one piece of the concept versus these are the other parts you did well and do understand. If we're only focusing on the final, did you get it correct or not, right? They could be like, they could have understood 80% of the question. One of the things I like to talk about this for is some math problems, they'll write it from the not perspective, I'll say. If they tell you like, okay, a class has 30 boys, has 30 students, 18 of the students are boys, what percentage represents what percentage represents students that are not boys, kind of thing. So you have to find the opposite. So the not and opposite perspective in a question. So a student can definitely understand, do the work, change it to a percentage, all of that. But then they missed the not part of the question. So then it'll be marked wrong. That doesn't mean the student didn't understand the concept though, right? We have to have a different kind of conversation with what they need to focus on for next time. Let me know if that makes sense. That if we're only focusing on the end game, did they get it correct or not? That's not adding any value, any feedback for what we do understand and where we can start building from there. That's why, again, this reflection, I'm going to keep talking about it, is essential. Reflection has to be part of this infrastructure we're talking about. Because if we are only repeating that basic cycle, then that's when we said if we're building identity by repeating experiences, right? The experiences that the young people have over and over, that's when an experience stops feeling like just a moment. And that's when it starts becoming identity, because it's happening over and over and over. So this is what we know. This is what we do. This is who I am. That's how that happens. So we're making sure that we interrupt that loop, that we're doing something different. We're reflecting and making sure we just bring back to how do we make sure the infrastructure, right? The organization of the math lesson, the flow, the emotions that we're giving and seeking, all of that they're all solid. around math. So about math, during math, and after math. So when we say math identity, again, we're not talking about just something abstract, y'all. We're talking about these patterns of experiences. I cannot emphasize that enough. So before, during, and after. Each one is important. Each one sets a tone. Each one gives an experience. So we're making sure that we're designing and curating these experiences with great intention, right? With great intention, being very specific. So the pattern, that's the infrastructure, right? Because the pattern, that's the infrastructure, that's what builds the identity. If students repeatedly experience, and this is at home and at school, if they repeatedly experience confusion, pressure, and unclear feedback, then they're going to learn and say to themselves, oh, that I struggle with math. But really, that's not on them. That's not on them if they're having some struggle, because unclear feedback, even as adults, we don't do well with that, right? In our respective spaces. Pressure. A lot of people do not like repeated pressure. Like, we understand that pressure comes sometimes, but repeated pressure, consistent pressure every day, right? No one likes that either. And you don't thrive and do your best there. Same thing, confusion. Confusion as adults, what do? We ask questions, we try to seek some clarity, but this is something we've learned and built over time. But imagine a lot of our young people, they're still learning, practicing that skill. So it's not there yet. But what they're learning instead is, I struggle with math. This is just something I'm not good at because of unclear feedback, confusion, or pressure from the adults. That's what we may be unintentionally giving the young people as they're building their identity. So we keep talking about math identity, the environment that either boosts it, right, or bumps it down, quite honestly. But we're also talking about, again, the infrastructure, these layers. How do we get there? How do we make sure it's a certain type of environment where they can thrive and they can really literally be okay with getting something wrong? It's not the end of the world. They're not shutting down. Just building that resilience, that grit, all those words people like to say, but we're making sure we lay out a path for how to get them there in math class, right? So if the math identity is what students believe about themselves as a math learner, again, the I don't get it, so I just won't get it ever. I'm not a math person. I'm not good at math. These things are not random at all, right? It's built through these patterns, the infrastructure, the system of experiences that students move through every day. That's why I keep talking about home and classroom, because it's both. It's both that are giving input into the system of their identity, what is their normal, their system of experiences, right? Both spaces have impact on that. Y'all, so when we're talking about the instructional structure, so for instructional structure, obviously this is more on the school side, the clarity of explanations. So when we're talking about what we expect, what should be infused, what should also be included, is considering the learning styles. Remember, we keep talking about learning styles. We talked about that a lot last week when we talked about instead of just study harder, just the perspective of studying for your learning style, right? A different way to study. Yeah, when we're given instructions, so it should be also posted for the visual learner. Yes, you said it for your auditory learner, slash, maybe there's also even a little checklist for them to have on their paper, right? That maybe has some icons next to it for your tactile person so they can, because even some of us are still, right? Some of us, when you make your to-do list every day, does it touch your heart, right? And warm your soul when you get to check something off that you did that you finished, I finished that one, right? Some of our young people are like that too. They want to be able to put yes, I did that step, Mrs. Jones. Okay. So again, y'all, even with something as simple as making sure the instructions are clear, the clarity of the expectations, please do consider the learning styles. as well. When we're talking about pacing, remember we said one of the examples for the during math, right? Or excuse me, the before we even get started. The teacher didn't put anything on the board yet, but maybe they said, all right, this is a review. You should know this already. And we talked about the emotions that went with that. But with that pacing, right? You can ask any educator, y'all, pacing, it is quick. I don't know any educator ever that I've ever met, ever, that said, oh, I have more than enough time to do all the things I need to do. You're not going to find one. You're not. So there is pressure on the adults connected to the speed, the rhythm that they're moving through, the standards, the skills that the young people have to learn. But a lot of times it is up faster than what our young people actually need, honestly. So that is always a thing that educators are trying to balance, to see where they can maybe borrow time from one area to extend time that they know the young people will need, build a foundation in a different area, right? That's an ever present everyday thing in a lot of educator space, especially with newer curriculums, right? I've been talking to teachers that have taught for a while, if they have newer curriculum, then even with newer teachers. But, a lot of these curriculum, they are writing at a level that is not considering that what happens if the students have like foundational gaps. I mean, and people are people, the young people are people. They have some gaps, even if it's something where they showed some understanding, maybe it wasn't full understanding. Maybe you have some students with significant gaps. And so a lot of the newer curriculum, it's one of the things we speak on about AI, it assumes everybody's ready to go and on level. And so that's its own battle with time, with pacing that educators are fighting every day. Right? Someone said time. What is time? A myth? A myth as far as educators are concerned, right? So another thing with the instructional side of the infrastructure, y'all, the opportunity to reason. Y'all gonna get tired of me talking about reflection. I don't care. I'm gonna do it anyway. So the opportunity to reason, to reflect, y'all, still with the time given to play and to explore, right? A lot of that is low. That goes back to again the CRA. Even with that, those layers, y'all, again, reflection is all in the mix the entire time. We don't wait until the abstract, until they have an actual question to start asking some reflective questions, right? To make sure there's some reflection in place. We're drawing on patterns, making observations the whole time. The whole time, right? We have to, the whole time. Y'all, another layer of the infrastructure, language. And I'm talking to everybody. I'm talking about teacher language right now, language at home, right, from the adults at home, and then also peer interaction. So a few things. So teacher language, being careful not to overgeneralize, right? So that it's difficult, causes some learning mishaps, some learning mistakes, some blocks even in later grades. Y'all know one of my favorite examples of this is when young people tell me, oh no, you can't take a bigger number from a smaller number. Well, you can. It's called integers, right? It's the negative side of the number line. But what happens in earlier elementary, usually like pre-K through second grade, that's what young people hear a lot in terms of, instead of saying, hey, we're going to put the number with the highest value on top, the teachers will say, the adults will say, you can't take a higher number from a lower number, which again, it rocks their world. When they get to middle school and start learning about integers, they were like, what? So the whole time, yep, the whole time, we sure could, you know? So being careful about overgeneralizing on some of the teacher language side. So the parent language side, not asking for it to be exactly academic. It does not have to exactly match the classroom. That's fine. That's okay. But the demonstration of rules, a lot of times when parents are helping, when adults are the adults at home are helping, Y'all, there is a demonstration of rules that the adults memorize from their own experience, and now they're attempting to pass on to the young people, but without any context, right? And that's difficult. That's difficult, causes some frustration because, especially now, our young people are given context consistently in class. So when they're asking you, well, why would I do that? Why? And so they're really trying to learn and understand because that's literally what they're used to in their learning space at school, that they're giving context. They're understanding the why. They're understanding not just the how we do it. They're understanding in real world context as well. Everything is a word problem. Some people say a story problem. They are used to context. The adults at home are not necessarily used to context because that's not what a lot of us had, right? We just knew how this is how you do it. Let's go. This is the rule. But the young people are being taught to understand the why. This is why this pattern works, right? This rule, this pattern. This is why it works. So that's what causes some frustration. So y'all know we've been having some demonstration moments during our sessions. And so thinking about the parent language, I'm going to show you as I talk to you. So we're going to do a subtraction problem, y'all, from an early grade. Really basic, just a problem. I'm going to write it on the side for you when we get there. Here we go. So base 10 blocks. So first of all, some of us may be like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. I'm in that. So base 10 blocks, this is, these are one of the manipulatives that young people use now to help them understand the, just the relationships between numbers, how the numbers work, the knowing that we're either like scaling up by powers of 10, scaling down by powers of 10. It's a great literal, concrete to representation to abstract. So before they would see this problem, this 500 minus 182 slash, I'm gonna pause and say this. A lot of times when we're giving young people, when young people are giving us side eye at the store and we're giving them side eye back when we're giving them cash, it's because they struggle with subtracting with zeros. That's really what's going on. It's the subtracting with zeros that is its own, it might as well be its own standard. So over time, I started treating it like its own standard because it's a common thing that the young people are not locked in solidly. Then at home, you might hear, well, cross out, then you borrow, then you got to carry this, but they don't know what we're doing. So they're crossing everything out, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about? So when we get to high school, we're working at, some type of cashier job, have to give people change back. They're like, it's these zeros again, right? That cause them this frustration and angst and all the not positive emotions from elementary. And so that's why they're giving you side eye when you give them some cash and you're giving them side eye back. Like, what's the problem? It's because subtracting zeros, y'all. That's really what's happening behind the scenes. And it has a lot of feelings for them that comes with it, right? So before we get to just the problem, the 500 minus 182, they would have seen something like this. We would have gone through and talked about the different blocks and the literal place values they represent. So if the young people were introducing it, the smallest one is ones, right? Then the next one, is tens. We'd be like, well, why does that make sense? And you have them counted. Oh, it's 10 little one. It's 10, right? So 10 ones makes a 10. That makes sense, right? Right. Okay. Then we drag over our flats, we call it, for the hundreds. And so we literally have them, right? If we're concrete, they have the hundreds down. I wonder if we can make some tens, if we can take some tens to make 100. So especially before learning multiplication facts, right? They'll lay it down and literally the way that the blocks are designed, the concrete actual blocks, then it does take exactly 10 rods. So 10 of the tens lay perfectly on top of the flat, the hundreds grid. So that's when they start learning, okay, so it's 10 tens that makes 100, right? Y'all with me? Because I know I locked in real quick. I'm stepped out of the lesson to explain that part real quick. We're checking back in. So after we talk about just these basic meanings of the blocks. So we're subtracting. All right, so I need, let me erase these others. So to do the subtraction problem, we actually would put 500s over here. So I have 500s. Cool. Now our problem says we're going to subtract 182. So we can use our eraser. We're going to subtract 100, and the young people usually tell you this, like, okay, so we need to subtract 182. What can we subtract now? We can subtract 100 because we have hundreds right there. That's true. Let's subtract 100, okay? Now going to the next place value. What's the next place value after the hundreds? Tens. Well, how many tens am I supposed to subtract? 8. I don't see any tens. Do you see any tens? No, right? A little while ago, we noticed something. We noticed there was a relationship, though, right? Between tens and hundreds. Do you remember what the relationship was? Oh, yeah. It took 10 tens to make 100. I have an idea. Sometimes the kids say it. It depends. You give them some time. Sometimes they say, okay, well, can we just do 10 tens instead of 100? If they need a little help getting there, I'll tell them it was my idea, right? I said, I have an idea. So we're going to swap 10 tens for 100. So we're going to pull 10 tens over. Y'all bear with me because it's sliding over. I wish there was a copy paste on this this particular platform because I'm always like, it takes so long to slide them over, especially when we're in the groove, All right, 9, 10. And being clear and being dramatic a little bit about this step. So if I just have 10 tens, why is that okay for me to put those? Were we changing something? Were we swapping something out? Yes, we were swapping 100 for it. Ooh, so let us not forget to erase 100 then, right? Okay, all right, Ms. Jones. Okay, so now how many tens do we have? We have 10 tens. How many were we supposed to subtract? We were supposed to subtract 8. Okay, we're supposed to subtract 8. Can I do that now? Do I have enough to subtract 8? I do. Okay. So if we have enough to subtract 8, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good deal. So we subtracted 100. Check. We subtracted 8 tens. What do we still have left to subtract? We're supposed to subtract 2 ones. Yeah, I see a similar situation. I still don't see what we need. I don't see anything in the ones. Let's see. When we had a problem last time, right, and we do this thinking out loud, these hints, if they need it. Last time we had a problem, we didn't have any tens, so we broke up, right, the hundreds into 10 tens. We swapped 100 for 10 tens. I wonder if there's another swap we could do that will help us with our situation for the ones. Oh, yes, yes, Ms. Jones, we can go ahead and swap a 10 for 10 ones. Cool. So we do that. So we're going to pull over the 10 ones. 1. I told you I wish we had a copy paste stuff. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so also again, right, they're pulling this over. We're thinking, we're planting the seed, being dramatic about the swap. So we just added 10 ones, but that's because we were swapping out 110. So we're going to make sure we erase that one, right? Right. Okay. So we were supposed to subtract 2 ones. Now I have enough. I have enough tens. I can subtract my 2. I have enough the ones. I can subtract 2 of them. So subtracting 2 ones. Literally, we've solved this question, right? Remember, the blocks represent certain numbers. So now we're just going to read what's left. We're going to read what's left. So in the 1 section, I have 8 ones with the value of 8. In the 10 section, I have 110, so that's a value of 10. And then in the 100 section, I have 3 hundreds right? So at this point, by the time we start adding and subtracting, young people are very familiar with, we call it expanded form, where you talk about the values, right, and each place value. So 300 plus 10 plus 8, 318. Uh-oh, the 8's a little raggedy. Let me fix that. All right. So y'all, so now we can go back and do this with the young people. So remember, when we didn't have enough ones, we got some help, right? We got some help from the tens place, right? Okay. And so that became 10. But remember also, we had to get some help for the tens because we didn't have any tens at first, right? So we had to go back and get help from the hundreds. But also because we took one away to help with the ones place, that 10 became a 9. Yeah, so all that crossing out and carrying and regrouping, it makes that much more sense because they built it and they actually did it. That's a much easier, not just easier, but a secure, literally a concrete conversation to have with a young person. You know, we do this several times. It's not like we do it once, but this is the flow. This is the conversation we have about this, especially subtracting with zeros, right? Do y'all see the difference? Y'all remember how we would have to learn which ones to cross? Why does that become a 9? I don't know. The teacher said it did. Okay. Right. Did any of y'all ever have some of those experiences where you were like, I mean, I guess we're going to cross this one out too. She crossed it out. I'm crossing it out. Right. But literally, after the conversation of moving and touching with the base 10 blocks, they remembered these, right? The tens. We had to touch the tens twice because we had to get tens from the hundreds. Then we gave tens to the ones. So that's why we touched the 10 twice, right? It went from a 10 to a 9. Yeah, so again, a lot of these conversations, it's not just rules and things to remember because they have experiences to draw back on because we did the concrete first. All right, y'all, let me know. I know this is maybe very new for some of us, but y'all let me know if y'all can see how this is very beneficial, making sure we start with the concrete and explaining the steps these ways with the young people. Y'all let me know. I'm about to switch. So once I remember the crossing out very well. Yeah. And so a lot of times for young people, if the crossing out is not anchored, right? The regrouping, the borrowing, the carrying, right? A lot of different names we have for it. If it's not anchored in why, truly, like there's not a true understanding, we're crossing out everything. We're crossing out everything. I don't know why the one in the middle had to be a 9. I thought it was still a 10. Like all these things are happening because there's no connection to the relationship for real. But we're making sure we establish the relationship that's locked in securely. That's the goal here, right? Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing that for y'all. Y'all know I love to have manipulative time with y'all. But besides that, on just parent language side, right? So being careful about, okay, cross this out, carry this, just being careful. We're also talking about peer interaction. Remember, we're talking about the language piece of the infrastructure. So peer interactions, we can tell when the young people have learned that speed is more valued than accuracy, right? Based on how they interact and treat each other. If someone's taking too long to get the answer or to get an answer, right? We can tell by the patience as others are learning, whether it's a snarkiness that comes out, some competition that's breeding, especially in those GT advanced spaces, right? A lot of that, it gets toxic quickly if we're not careful. The interactions and expectations around grouping, right? The things students learn about the grouping nuances. If it's always high, medium, low versus a mixed group sometimes in terms of ability versus a mixed group in terms of their learning styles. What happens if I put all the kinesthetic learners together, right? So just such flexible grouping that is ideal to really keep everybody at their best selves, I'll say, at their best selves. Okay. Yeah. So the last thing we're going to talk about in terms of the layers of infrastructure is the experience infrastructure. So, what experiences, like if we had to group them, if we had to group experiences, um, these repeated experiences that these young people are having that adds to their system of experiences. What happens when they have success? What happens when they have success? How are they treated? Is it acknowledged at all? Right, no matter the size. It makes me think of Rita Pearson. Yeah, I know she had a she has a very famous TED talk where she talked about a 20 question test and a student missed 18, right? But she put +2. So that was a win. He didn't get them all wrong, right? That was her joke. He didn't get them all wrong, so +2. And he felt good about that. He was like, you know what, you're right. So how are wins, regardless of the size, treated? I feel like elementary school is really good at this in the immediate sense, right? Sometimes there's in class celebrations, even if it's just like a chant that's done. But secondary is more culturally delayed with celebrating success moments, but it's like a big deal, though. Like it's really great. So it'll be maybe after some reports are pulled for who had good attendance, who showed improvement in their grade or their benchmark, right? Who was overall a good citizen. Then it's literally like a full on party every 6 weeks, every quarter, whatever that grading period is, right? So it might be delayed. It might not be instant in the class, but it's like over the top. It's really, really amazing, right? Someone said, "Yeah, but that was my experience, just doing it because the teacher did it." Definitely, definitely. So success moments. What about moments of confusion? Same thing. How are they treated? Are they even acknowledged? If you can tell somebody's confused, do you keep going? Do you act like everybody's good with the lesson and we just keep, right? Is it even acknowledged? That's a big deal. So, is it recognized as feedback for the adult, whether it's in the classroom or at home, right? Is it a wondering for the adult? Or does the adult say, well, what's wrong with them? Why don't they understand? Right? There's usually a two-way communication thing to consider, right? Usually a two-way communication thing to consider, where it's like, you know what? Okay, if they're confused, hmm, what adjustment? What adjustment do I need to give in the directions in my word choice versus what's wrong with them? Why didn't they understand what I? So just a lot of nuances. So, quick story, confusion moments. So, just like adults, we ask, right? Um, my son had learned about the Texas Revolution. There was a question that said, how did the Texans feel about slavery? He put mad, and it was marked incorrect. And I'm like, okay, I wonder why he put that. I had a wondering, right? So I asked, I said, well, why did you feel that they were mad about that? Never in a million years would I have guessed what he said. He said, well, we learned that they were fighting for their freedom. So, I thought they were mad about slavery. Oh, okay. So then we had a conversation about freedom versus independence. But you see the nuance there? And had I not had a wondering about, I wonder what made him put this. And that's a different subject, but this is the same attitude and approach we should have, obviously, in math. Like we should have that attitude and approach, period. Okay, because it could be, and it wasn't that he didn't understand the perspective, it was the word choice, right? Okay, I'm just saying. Y'all, another layer with the experience, feedback patterns. Feedback patterns. So are you getting the same questions throughout the day or day to day, week to week, right at home? Is it the same mistake consistently? Literally, literally, we need to clock that pattern, y'all. It's powerful. It's powerful info, again, on what adjustments need to be made, what considerations for instructions, our support at home, directions, also just the flow of feedback in classroom life. The flow of feedback. Do young people know when to expect feedback? Are they provided with time and space to improve between feedback touches? And is student to student feedback expected, encouraged, and curated? All of that, right? So all of these layers. So when we talk about feedback, yeah, there's some things to consider around it. It's not just, well, yeah, I wrote a note. It's we're deeper than that. If it's going to be effective feedback, right, we need to be much deeper than that, which again is requiring and including our own reflection. Because students don't just learn math, they learn who they are in math. And that comes from, again, their experiences, their language, and yes, the instruction side. That's what they're learning. All of this is input, all of this. So at home, identity is shaped again through the conversation largely. So instead of you just need to focus, you already learned this. So we can try. What part makes sense so far? Okay, well let's slow this down together. Y'all, language is a major part of the infrastructure. I can't emphasize that enough, right? If we only focus on the scores, the test scores, we miss the system that produced them. We're saying the infrastructure. So this is like a culture thing, right? That we're speaking on. We're speaking on this in aim of shifting for better, even better math experiences for all involved in these exchanges. So if we're talking about culture, that means the beliefs, the systems, and the actions. We talked about this through a different lens before, but I want to be clear while we're talking about the infrastructure. So if culture is based on beliefs, systems, and actions. Beliefs are those things that we're really good at, right? We're really good at talking about what we stand for, what we want to represent us, our motto, um, school life. These might be things that are in the mission, the strategic initiatives, campus improvement plans, all that kind of stuff references the things that we're stand for, we're focusing on, right? But then we're talking about the infrastructure, which is the systems. What systems are actually in place to support these things? What language, what experiences, right? How is instruction flowing to actually support these things? Then the actions. If these are the systems, what are the actions underneath the systems? So we've talked a lot about the different things, y'all, because again, a lot of campus improvement plans, mission statements, strategic initiatives reference things like student growth, closing gaps between subgroups, right? Academic readiness, early math intervention, consistency in instruction, vertical alignment. So, a lot of these things we spoke to, but we're making sure we're careful about our language, our experiences, and the actual instruction to get there. Because it's cool for it to be on paper, but we're talking about the actual things that impact them. So this is your pacing versus understanding. Like which one are we tending towards? Am I on schedule with my pacing calendar? Or am I kind of right? Like I talked about doing that ebb and flow to make sure a little more time can be spent for authentic understanding. Coverage versus clarity. Well, yeah, they said we had to teach it, so I taught it. But was it clear? Then again, speed versus reasoning. Based on your reaction, based on your feedback, which one is more valued? This is at home and in the classroom. Because, y'all, we don't have a student problem. We have a system design problem, an infrastructure problem. So, parents, educators, leaders, we're all interacting with the same system, y'all, but from different angles. And sometimes I think we forget that. The students, the adults, they're all attempting to function within it despite the literal design flaws. All of these pieces, all of these layers, they're shaping identity. When identity destabilizes, right? When it's unsure, uncertain, then performance follows suit. Y'all, this is where, right, in our holistic fluency space, this is where AI really comes into play because it's not replacing teaching, but it's a tool to strengthen the clarity. So, right, this is one of our last streams in March. We have one more, but in April, I'm going to show how AI can help build better questions, clearer thinking, and stronger instructional moves, right? Speaking to the language, the experiences, right? And the overall instruction pieces. Like we said, those are the things that fuel the infrastructure. So if you're navigating this at home and you have some questions, y'all start with the parent resources in our link. Okay, we're going to pin it and drop it right now. We have some things we curated very specially for you all. But also, I want to say this as well. If you are connected to a campus, if you are thinking about this at the classroom level or the campus level, systems level, y'all, I'd love to continue this conversation. So you can also use that same link to schedule a consultation so we can really talk about the things that need to be talked about, right? As we're changing and striving to change the infrastructure around math, this is helping us change the identity, part of our heart's work. Okay. Y'all, thank y'all so much for listening and tuning in. Right. You even got a little manipulative time tonight and everything. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you have any questions. All right. See y'all next week. Bye bye.